Copic friends and family. Michelle Houghton here. We are doing a little Copic color along again today. I haven't gone back to any of my Stampingbella stamps in a really long time. Every once in a while, I just can't resist, and I end up with 4 or 5 of these all at once that I buy from a release that they have. And this is one that came out a while ago, but I have not had a chance to color it up. I end up getting caught doing design teamwork and then don't do other things. So I'm thrilled to be doing some coloring on a different image. I've just about gotten to the point where I only do like no line coloring with light pink or light gray. But I thought for ease and for quickness, I think I had just, again, I'm giving myself the cheat of giving those black lines. This one is on Copic Express It, and I have not selected colors, so let's have fun and just pick some fun colors. I think I'm definitely going to use some violets and maybe some blue greens. But what I'm thinking of ahead of time a little bit is, what do I really want, the entire scene. One of the things that I've talked about in the past is being really cautious about adding too many colors. So this is going to be, let's see if this gets light enough. This is a V series, V05, 06, and 09. I bet that'll work. And then let's see, do we want something more neutral? I don't know, that's so bright. We could do another real bright one. Let's see, but maybe a little lighter. What if we do, this isn't always an easy group, but what if we did BG 1311, sorry, 1113, and one, no. I kind of remembered this. The 1.5 is almost lighter than the 1.3. So there we go, 1.8. So maybe those two colors for some of our primary kind of clothing colors. And we might need, and we'll have to decide, like I could do maybe little patterns simplified, and then the hat's kind of the solid colors of those two colored families. That might be really fun. Let's do that. Then some fun, simple color choices for the skin and hair. Again, there's a lot going on in this image with all the hair, the bows, the stuff. And if we put them in a scene, I don't want to necessarily make it super complicated. So I'm going to do the skin tones in two each. So let's do one of them, a 1-1 and a 1-3, really basic ones. And then let's do the other one. We're going to go a little bit darker today on both of them. So neither one is super pale. What if we did, can't remember if I like, ooh, maybe this. Haven't. Although this will be quite a bit lighter. I'm not sure if... Well, did I fib? Maybe I fibbed. No, I'm going to do 3-1 and 3-3. We'll do that one. All right. But I am definitely going to put some cheek tones in there, but I think I'm going to have to play with that once I get there. I don't know that I have the perfect, see that? It's probably going to be too light. What about, my guess is this is too light as well. This is too dark. That might work. Hold that off to the side here. Okay, so there's some skin tones. We've got some E E3s and E1s and an E04 for some skin tones. I'm just kind of gathering here. And for the hair, I'm thinking one a little bit more reddish. So let's base in that YR31. I had it out yesterday. There we go. And then go up to, in fact, we might use that E13, E15, E09. So it's going to be brown, but it's more that auburn brown, and I think that would be really pretty. And then the other one, let's do those E4s and get it to a nice really dark. So maybe E43 through E49, and we can play with that as well. And that'll be a deep brown that has almost black. Get a tiny bit more light on the table there. All right, well, I hope that all of you are starting off your summers here, because we're getting close. By the time you guys are seeing this one, we'll be close. Hope you are doing well. All right, so I'm going to do the E1 and E3 on this little gal over to the left. Zoom in a little bit. I wish you guys could yell at me if I slip off the screen, but we'll give it a go. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in her hand and her little face. There's not much to it. And then kind of find a little bit of that shape. There's not a whole lot though. I mean, there's just not that much showing. So tuck this back under her hat, under her hair. I'm going to go kind of down one edge of those little fingers. The underside of her nose. And obviously, I might not even really need to do any blending, but I'd like to bring this E04 in. And I'm going to bring it in on her nose as well, because a lot of times little gnomies have kind of reddish hints on their noses. Coming back to my E11. There we go. Just little touches of that to soften those edges. And that's really it for the one. You can see that is definitely a darker skin tone. Purposefully, I've been kind of aiming my stuff that way recently. Had a lot of requests for that in different places. So now this is an E31. You're going to notice this has a distinct kind of olive undertone. So for different skin tones, and there's different groups of people that have kind of an olive undertone to their skin, this is a really good one to incorporate. However you incorporate it, whether it's a base layer or it's a layer kind of in the middle or on the top, this is one to get that kind of olive undertone to those skin tones. And I feel like it works actually pretty well. So E31, you can kind of tuck that into the back of your head and remember that one. Then I'm going up to an E33. Again, this is pretty wet, and so I should have a very easy time getting this to blend in. Very round little face, round little nose. I shouldn't say little nose. These two have got big noses, but the image is so sweet, and I like the sentiment too. I'll keep a secret, but when I keep a secret, it does not mean I'm keeping a secret from my best friend. I think most of us feel that way. And I'm going to go ahead and add those little touches of this kind of dusty rose color, that E04. For darker skin tones, I find this is a really great one to incorporate for kind of rosy cheeks, lip color. It's one of my absolute favorite lip colors. I just feel like it works really well in tandem with a lot of different things. Jump back to my E31 and let's hit those edges of those darker colors, that E33 and a little bit that E04. Let those kind of melt and soften into each other. There we go. Let's see, this edge I need to work on just a touch. Let's come over to this right hand side. It's pretty wet, so we'll see. There we go. Of course, now it's going to be darker than the other side, but I feel like it had a funny gap there, and I've left a little bit of one here because we go over into the ear, but I'm thinking we need to pull that over just a little bit too. There we go, right there. Didn't take much. That'll work. Perfect. Or at least happy with it. How about that? There we go. So we've got our two little girls' faces and hands kind of tucked into their secret telling mode. So let's go ahead and do their hair. I'm going to do, trying to think, we've got kind of this darker set and then kind of a reddish, deep reddish. And I'm wondering if it'd be better to kind of swap, but I think I'm still going to stick with what I've got, where the olive skin tones might lend itself more to that really dark, almost black hair. So let's go ahead and do E43, and I'm going to fill it in, watching out for those bows. See if I can get all of her hair. Let's see, and we have this piece up here. Now, the style of hair I tend to do is a lot of flicking, and it is going to be a little difficult around all of these pieces because we've got the bows, we've got their hands, and so we've got a lot of pieces to work around, and you have these little tiny sections of hair. So when I do this today, it might turn out so it's more of a smooth blend versus having a lot of flicking, just so you know. So I'm going to switch here and go now from dark to light. So E49 is my darkest, and those are going to be those spots where it's those deepest shadows. So I'm going to go right up to that top corner where it's coming out from under her little hat. And then I'm going to have a few out from the bow, but not a whole lot. Perfect on that side, just what I wanted. Little short, couple from behind her ear, because that part's going to be right in around that hand. We want those dark because those are pieces that are actually tucked behind her a little bit. Okay, I think that's going to be enough with E49, but with hair we can always come back. So E47 is next. Comes out from the same spot, so it is going to start softening. But I'm gonna do a few more with this color so it starts filling in that space, and I'll do a few flicks coming from the bottom little edges of the ponytails up, little pigtails. Let's see. I have to kind of move slowly through the image because there's so many little pieces. I just know somewhere along here I'm going to miss this little tucked in piece that should be hair on one of them, and I'll come back and do it. It's no big deal. It's nice to hit them the first time around though. All right. And then E44. This is almost going to cover up that E43. Just about. So if it does, that's okay. And then you can decide if you want to bring some of that light back in and brighten up some of those highlights. I definitely wanted a darker hair color, so I'll see where this gets to when I kind of finish up here. If it's not dark enough, I can always add more, but I think right over here on this right side, because of the way it kind of kicks out from her face a little bit, add a tiny bit of that E43 and a few little spots on the side. On here, maybe just one or two. I'm pretty pleased with that. I feel like a little bit more. There we go. A little more dark. Okay. Yeah, I think that feels a little better, a little darker, especially on these little tails. I feel like those ended up almost catching a bunch of light, a little too light. There we go, better. And I can soften that with either the E44 or the E43, using the E44 just a little bit. So it did get pretty dark. It's a little bit smoother than sometimes that I do, but it's almost impossible to do a lot of little flicking in between all these pieces. So there we go. So there's the darkest. And then let's see what we can do with this little gal. Now I'm basing, she doesn't have much hair showing at all. This is an YR31. And this is almost going to disappear, but this is a color I use a lot for a reddish brown kind of auburn hair. E13 is next. I'm just going to work from my light up to my dark on this one, kind of laying down those layers. It's actually, this side is much easier because her big kind of poof is out away from her hand, and so this little gnome, her little ponytail is actually a little bit easier to tackle. E15 is next. We'll get a good jump up in color. The E1s have a distinct kind of reddish undertone to them, so it works really well with kind of an auburn when you're going for kind of an auburn hair. And I'm trying to, obviously I could turn this sideways if you need to. I'm trying to work this in the shape of that hair so it's kind of moving in the direction. I have a couple flicks going the wrong way, but not too bad. And then E09 for some real red. And I might need to go, I'm going to need to go darker with one of my earth tones, because this is pretty close actually to her skin color. which makes sense. But I think I'm going to want the hair a little bit darker. So I am going to grab an E17. See if that's enough to kind of kick it in. There we go. And obviously by now that YR31 is almost completely gone. And I am okay with that. It was more just that kind of underpainting, creating that reddish undertone to begin. And the fun part is I can now come back with my two lighter colors in those little highlight areas. This is the E13. This is going to smooth it out just a little bit, kind of soften things into each other. And then if I want to, I can come back with the YR31 and kind of pick and choose a couple little spots. And it almost works like if you've used your colorless blender to brighten up highlights, it'll actually have that same effect because this one is so much lighter than the other markers. There we go. I actually really like how that one turned out. That's a pretty combo. Put that mental note in there, a little pin. Remind myself later that that was a combo that I liked. I think I end up leaning towards similar combos most of the time anyway, but all right. So now we have their hats and their little dresses. So I think the little Nomi on the right is going to go violet, and I think her hat is going to be solid. So let's get that going first. Now I'm going to show you this, everybody. See if I can get the lids facing the same way. Here is another lid that is not totally accurate. We've got a V05, a V06, and a V09. And hopefully you can see on here that V06 looks like it's going to be lighter than the V05. It is not. So this is another one where the lid is not completely accurate. Just be aware of that. I think I'm going to go dark to light on their little hats. So I'm going to do V09. This is a cone shape. So we're going to go dark toward the edges. It's going to come in, and then there'll be kind of a triangle shape of highlight that comes down kind of the center of that little hat, because we're just saying they're out on a sunshiny day whispering secrets. Now you could add little folds, but I'll be honest, they don't really seem to have little folds. So I'm going to keep this pretty straight up and down so we can kind of see that wedge shape highlight. And then the brim, as it folds over, it's going to catch light on that top edge, and then it'll get darker as it curls under around her little face. So we'll go the V09 right along the bottom edge, a little bit higher maybe around those outer edges. And then V06, I'm going to have to remind myself to look at my marker to make sure I'm picking up the right one with this series. So it's going to start out on the V09 and it's going to work in a little bit further. Make sure you're turning your image so it is going the direction you want it to for your hand to work the most easily. And then we'll go ahead and do the little brim as well. Again, starting from on top of that V09 and pulling into, and if I can't get it to kind of melt right away, I'll do some small circles right on top of that edge to kind of soften that V09. and then flick into that highlight area. And then V05. And actually, maybe it's the V05 that's the least accurate when you look at the little cap. And then it goes right up into that little tip. The last color, though, when you're going dark to light is kind of fun, though, because you start in that highlight area and push out into it. If your image has dried a little bit, just make sure to kind of roll over the edge of that mid-tone, circle a little bit, get it nice and wet, and then pull it all the way across. If you need to, you can go all the way down into the dark. But okay, that's cute. Cuteness overload. Okay, let's go down to the bows. Let's do, and I'm wondering, would it be fun to switch and do the pattern and the bows kind of opposite? Maybe. So let's do the V09 over on our second friends. They're friends. They like to have twin days. They're young gnomes. So we're going to go in and add some of this V09 into the darkest area. And we only see one of her bows. Double checking. V06. And then the V05 will be last. And that's going to be those spots where it kind of puffs out toward us, because that's where it's going to catch light. It's kind of the easiest way to think about that. So kind of that center piece of the knot, because it rounds out towards us. And then in between on the bow, you know how a bow usually has like a couple lines that are showing how it tucks inward. So it's going to be in between those, where then it puffs back outward toward the viewer. So we go in between those little dashes, those little hatch marks. They're pleats to kind of show how it kind of bows back outward towards us a little bit. And seeing that tail is part of our other little girls. Then let's think about, we'll have to think about a pattern for her. We could do a little flower pattern or a little plaid. This piece of paper it bothers me a little bit. There's a little bit of a mark on this piece of paper. It's been in my stash forever. So when I pulled it out, it was already there. Wondering if she's wearing a plaid today. I'm thinking yes. So then if I did, I think the question is, if I did, do I want it all purple or do I want some purple and white? She's pretty small, so I could do a real simple kind of pinky purple. You know, the other thing I could do, this might even work better, is I could look for, in the same color family, what if I did an even lighter? Oh, this might be cute. Let's do this. I know I'm going to do these too. So we're going to fill in her little dress with V01. Is that what it's called on a gnome? Is this a little dress? Is it a smock? I mean, it obviously is all the way from her neck to her, covering her little feet. So maybe dress. But let's fill that in. Now, the trick with, if I do a plaid, is I have to think about the direction of that fabric. I don't want to go straight up and down. If I do, I completely lose her shape. That's not okay. We want to still see her shape. So a couple things you can do. You can add a little bit of shading if you want, right at this stage. So if I wanted to do that, I probably want the color I can't find. I know there's no, doesn't want to. This will work. This is a V12. I don't know what I got on this piece of paper, but it's obviously not going to play nicely. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of shape, not a lot, and I'm not going to worry about blending it in, but kind of the roundness to her little back end. And add a little bit of shape down here. Okay, because the more important part, that's V12. Make sure I put the cap on right. Since I'm throwing them around smartly, then the V05. So what's going to happen with this wider band of the plaid is it's going to work its way around her shape. And I definitely could have waited for this to dry completely because we're going to end up with a little bit of bleeding. And then we've got, we'll say this one goes kind of off. So I've got 3 little chunks to that wide stripe. It comes around her shape, little buns, and then it goes around and out. And that's helping create that kind of puddle. And I'm going to say there's another one all the way back here that we don't really see because it's tucked behind her. And then I'm going to have around her arm. And then we have to go the opposing ways. So on her arm, it's pretty easy. And I'm going to do this one away at the front. And again, it'll follow the shape of her arm. And right now, that's going to look really confusing, but it'll help when I get the smaller lines in there. And then from here, let's do maybe 2. And hopefully that'll take away from that ridiculous spot I got on here. But again, curved lines. They do not go straight across. And maybe there's the hint of one up under her hat. Then we'll say this one comes across, but it's really narrow because of the way it's falling into that fold. So we may not see all the pieces of that stripe, but that looks pretty darn good. And at this point, I could do some correcting if I need to, but I think I need to let it actually sit for just a second because if I put that thin line on there, it's going to be hard to keep it thin because this is still pretty damp. But the question is going to be, do I like a V06? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on both sides of the wide stripe. It doesn't need to be perfect. This is one of those times that's a little harder for me to talk while I'm drawing because I am focusing in pretty hard on what I'm doing. So I apologize that I'm not visiting all the way through this. I probably shouldn't have done that. Oh well. I don't think it needed the stripe at the bottom. I needed one or the other, but we probably aren't going to see. So the question's going to be, do I like that lighter tone, or would I like to see that final stripe even darker? I'm not sure. I think I'm just gonna I think I'm gonna wait and decide because I'm not sure. Okay, so let's swap colors, and we're gonna go in with the BG series. I've got a BG 1/8. Now this one, our highlight's going to shift because of the way she's tipped back. The majority of the highlight's going to be on the top edge of that hat out on our sunny day. So the darker color, the BG 1/8, is going to go quite a ways across from the bottom edge up. We might have just a touch the very top edge, because we want to show that it's round. And then we got to come kind of create that roll effect on the hat. Here we go. So BG 1/8. Then we're going to jump down to BG 1/3, starting on that darker color, kind of circling along that. And this is how I do it, but I know people who can truly just flick and it just melts. I need a little help sometimes, kind of circling on that edge of the darker. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of BG combinations that are not the friendliest of blenders. They're people's favorites because they love the blue greens. They love that color family. They love the look of those colors, but they are not the easiest to color with. They tend to be trickier to get those nice smooth blends with. So give yourself a little grace there if you're a person who enjoys working with these. Or I shouldn't say it that way. If you're a person who really likes these color combos but just can't seem to get them to blend, you are not alone. There are a lot of us. It's just a harder group to get those smooth blends. And I might even have to do a little bit of back and forth, going back to my mid-tone. And my light. And I might have to let it dry a little bit and see kind of what happens if it gets where I want it to go. All right. Next, bows. So the dark goes into those little pleats, goes around the edge of the knot, and it goes right underneath where the little tail pops out. And this one we've got another bow, pleats, where that tail pops out. And I think this is the other tail of this one. We're gonna say it is. BG13. So on these, I'm truly just going right over the BG18, going a little bit further, coming out from that outer edge and kind of pushing in. So you end up with these almost little like M or W shapes that are left behind in the highlight, the white still. Hoping you can kind of see that, because that's going to create those little dips, ins and outs for those pleats. Extend that. And then I'll have to think of another fun pattern, maybe a little either dots or flowers would be fun. We could do the same thing. We could go with a really, really light BG. This one's pretty light, but we could go even lighter and then put the pattern on top of it. That might work really, really well. Kind of lost the shape on that one. We might have to come back in. Doing a little work there. Now the BGs are one that if you want to, you can come in and do some work with your colorless blender as well. So on this, I think, let's do this. BG18, let's come in and redefine those little pleats. Here we go. And then that already helped. Actually, might leave it there. Let's let that sit for a moment. Then let's grab a really light BG quadruple 0. So you're barely going to see this. It's really, really light. We use that BG 000 on the sky a lot. And this is even lighter. Now, one cautionary note about using a color this light. If you bump up into her hair or onto those bows or onto her skin, it will act like the colorless blender. So slow down as you approach those things, because it will push at those colors. You got a lot of the alcohol, the colorless blender solution in this marker. So give yourself some time. Okay, then instead of doing something fancy, what if we just do more like little clusters of flowers? We'll put a center in, don't worry. Little flower guys. I have a couple that tuck into her bottom little folds there. Want to get some up on her sleeves. Maybe one that pops out from under. One that goes around the corner. And some can be closer together. We don't need them exactly spaced. There we go. That's pretty good. And then let's use that darkest one. Here we go. Let's see. So really simple. Maybe yeah, I think that needed that. So one thing I'm noticing on her, because we have these things kind of sitting on top, one thing that would help on this one is actually adding that little bit of a cast shadow under her arm and kind of hair and bows and stuff. So I'm going to grab my BV20. Add. There we go. I feel like that's going to help. I feel like she had gotten flattened out a little bit, and I feel like that helps. We could do the same thing over here, but I have a feeling I need to go a little bit darker. So let's do the same thing. Come up under a little hat. And it doesn't just outline. Think about like over here, we're not going to see the shadow because it doesn't, where it's sitting, we don't see the shadow above the object. We want to see it below the object. So don't just outline things. Think about it. Okay. Actually, I really do think that helps. I'm going to put this on her bow too. There we go. So we've really set some things back in, and to me that actually helps a little bit. Now, the other place we could put it is along their little faces and hair. Completely up to you. If you do it, I would keep it really, really narrow, just because their faces are kind of small to begin with, so you don't want to close it down too tightly. I'm using the BV23. Right in, because these are those kind of mid-tone colors, and actually that looks really pretty on that color combo. Nice. Gotta love it when it works well. All right, what do you think? They're so cute. So I'm thinking super, super simple, kind of grassy hill, kind of my traditional, and blue sky. I think I'll speed us up for that, and then we'll finish you up. Sound good? I hope so, because that's what you're getting. All right. I'm going to use some G4s for our grassy hill, because that always, it's an easy go-to. if I can find them. And then I'm going to use do I use my traditional? Just go for it. BG 000 for the sky. All right. Take this back out a little bit and we'll finish this little image up. All right, friends. Fun. It took a little longer, but it's more because there were more elements involved and decisions to make along the way. But the coloring itself is not super complicated. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you can find an image that's similar or this one and color along or try something similar in your own time. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a most happy, colorful day.